I was asked to get involved with this in relation to activities as part of this, the Precarious Workers Brigade, which have just been sort of forging some amazing alliances with CUTE of late. So it's really an honour to sort of help bridge that link. Precarious Workers Brigade has started its life in the UK amongst mainly cultural and education-based workers. And I don't want to kind of privilege the UK in any way, except to say that it's obviously a place where dark shit happens, as you know, colonial financial heartlands can do. And it's, as George was saying, it can be a kind of cautionary tale there. So I guess, we highlight this word precarious, and Christina gave an amazing introduction to those terms. I guess the only thing I want to maybe add in, and apologies if you said it and I didn't catch it, but that also that the kind of the unregulated nature of workspace is also really central here, whether it's under the table work or it's people working in spaces which are commercial rather than kind of regulated job spaces, like coffee shops, for example. So, and despite the facts of this continued drive to be connected, to be constantly kind of networking for work, the solidarity links seem more tenuous now perhaps than they would have been in different kinds of workspaces. So those are things we concentrated on as the Precarious Workers Brigade, along with the idea that we should be ready to work all the time. And that you should always be ready to step in and step up, and the politics of that being deeply exclusionary to people who have other concerns, other loyalties, other ethics in the world, and that, you know, working constantly is an incredibly classed, gendered, racialized, kind of proposition. So, I mean, I think, again, everyone here will know all this, but I just wanted to put that out there because obviously the internship requires that scrutiny on those terms too. It assumes that you can be ready to work. It assumes that you have no other commitments, that you have enough money to support yourself, that you can hold all that down and go to school as well. And it preys ultimately, and this is where I will kind of sort of home in on what the Precarious Workers Brigade have been doing, on an unknown future, that you have an unknown future ahead of you that you are preparing for. So if we could maybe have the slide up, I'll explain what I mean by that. Okay, so the logic goes like this, right? That, you know, there's no reliable work out there, that you can, you know, the boss will go, you can come and work for us for free or on low pay, like an internship, because in the future, you'll have proved yourself and you might get some form of secure employment, or maybe not. Maybe you'll just be replaced by another intern, which we all know to be the constant cycle of exploitation here. So we carried this, you know, that's why we're constantly using a carrot as our metaphor for this sense of like, it's always out of reach, the sense of you getting the rewards. Thank you. I've never had somebody do the slides for me. It's lovely. I feel like a little odd about it though. So yeah, there's the carrot on a protest in London. This idea of how, you know, the offer of a better future and better rewards dangled just out of our reach at all times. We carried this metaphor on with okay, so think carrot, and then you go. This is how we carried that metaphor further by using donkey masks for a number of our actions, in that it draws the parallel to the idea of working like a donkey, being treated like an ass, whatever you want to do with that kind of that language, but also allowed us the continuity, the sort of anonymity and collectivity to get involved in more radical actions. You know, I want to. Where was I going here? Yeah, so I want to do a tiny little bit of a detour into the arts and culture, because that's where many of our actions were focused for one reason or another, and you know, also because it seems like, I don't know, I work in teaching film studies, and I'm constantly engaging with people who think that an internship or doing free work is a natural thing that just is part of the process. And, ask your parents if you're talking to your parents, and ask older people if they ever worked for free, and it's unlikely that they will say yes if they're over 40 or so. So this sense is really sharp within the arts and culture that working for free gets you a foot in the door. Let's have another slide. Yeah. So I'm in film studies, and this will be familiar to anyone that works in film, but also other arts. That all of this language equals no pay, and it's again you'll be very familiar with that. Now. Well, these sorts of infringements on your rights are usually, let me see. Yeah, so in film and culture in particular, and the arts, all of these kinds of infringements are framed very much as like, well, but you care about this. You're passionate about these things, so you will go that extra mile, because actually it's not about being treated as a worker. It's not about all this politics and ethics of wage that my two comrades have already spoken about. It's you care about this. It's money is nothing in this kind of fulfillment of your creative potential. What we were trying to do with the Precarious Workers Brigade, and something that I think is very important in a city like Montreal, which has a creative economy, is to sort of debunk that sense that working for free is not an extreme form of exploitation. So just to break it down a tiny bit, Canada offers enormous tax breaks for, let's say, international entertainment companies to locate here. Think of all the Hollywood, you can't walk around Montreal these days, right, without seeing a film shoot somewhere. Vancouver has this, Toronto, and it's because we have ununionized film labor. So Hollywood, for example, thinks, great, we'll go to Canada to shoot. Think about Ubisoft too. Why is Ubisoft in my land? Tax breaks, yes. But it's also because we have, I'm going to say later that there's a complicit link with university education to supply those sorts of workers to global big business, whether it's entertainment or otherwise. So as part of these promises that Canada, for example, makes to those kinds of companies to entice them into cities like Montreal, is a cheap, precarious workforce. All of those principles of passion, of competition in creative work, of overexertion, very much feed that economy. And like I said, later on I want to tie that into how education feeds people into that kind of exploitation. But first, let's go to the next one. I wanted to say that, again, just the PWB, the Precarious Workers Brigade, took shape in Britain at a very particular moment, and it really sort of knits in with a lot of the things George said about student rights. Where we really, really got going was understanding the nexus of insecurity and exploitation around what student life was like at a moment of the university fee hike protests, which happened in 2010, 2011 in the UK. And the simple story, gloss on that, is that we lost and you guys won. And George said to me earlier, like, why are you in Canada? I'm like, well, that's the reason. I moved at that point. So again, what the PWB has been trying to do is to understand this convergence point that happens with a student population. They're taking advantage of a particular demographic, but also the modeling of this kind of sense of creating a future that's bleaker actually than it's ever been before for many generations. So here you may or may not notice a carrot being rammed into a government building. There's some fires, and if you're from Immigration Canada, I really wasn't there that day. Those donkey masks reveal nothing. The connections were clear to us that an expensive education was creating a deep and harmful interweave between, as George has said, debt, which fed precarity, making people poorer, more desperate for work, but it also, perpetuating the cycle, more desperate for education too, as like this could be my way out of a kind of unpredictable and unreliable employment landscape. So All of this made us realize that higher education discourse was a place we should be really working. So let's go. Let's go on. Let's carry on. There's another, usual stuff. So we ended up sort of concentrating on 3 working themes: working conditions, education, and solidarity. The solidarity stuff is the coolest, but today I'm talking about education because we're in this building. Let's go. Thank you so much. And so as a group, many of us were students or educators or somehow involved in education, and we saw that students were getting a raw deal on all sides, be that parental pressure to, get a job and go and do a course that got you a job, to really broad policy shifts within how education was being framed post the fee strike, and the failure to fight a fee hike that went from £3,000 to £9,000, like that. So we wanted to critique also how the government followed up on this, and again, it's specific, but I think we might see it soon in Canada or in one form or another, as George said about the US. So I kind of, hopefully, some of this will be useful if we have to fight these battles. So first up, thank you. The government really, really went heavy on education should, as they were privatizing, forcing a logic of employability on the universities. You have to make your students employable. You have to be accountable for the jobs they are getting. It's all about training them for work, and a successful university is one that gets students into jobs, no matter what the jobs are. And obviously we wanted to critique that. And this takes the form of let's go on. Let's have another slide. For all these policies seemed very much to equate with, just the one actually, but that's my fault. Yeah, okay, let's just forget the second one for a minute. The idea that you should be training students to be ready for jobs rather than ready to critique the exploitation of a workforce. And that was really central to how we were being taught to teach students. So it wasn't about, I would like to say, I don't want, if a parent came to me at an open house, for example, and said, how's my son going to get a job? And I'm like, I don't want to be teaching them that. I want to teach them how to just destroy the whole notion of a job. So, yeah, everyone signed up for my classes. This sort of insistence on practical processes for finding jobs, instead of, kind of finding the critical tools to actually smash the very system that enslaves people in labor in those ways. And let's now go to this one. We found that it was being framed, and I think you'll find this yourself, maybe not in the classroom necessarily, but perhaps, in the way jobs are conceptualized, that it's all about individualistic self-improvement and self-management. That it was up to you to succeed in the job market. If only you have the right skills, the right body language, the right interview techniques, the right CV. There was strangely very little room to discuss the way employment is skewed massively to able-bodied white men, for example, and the portfolios that they produce for this market. Ageism, obviously, is a huge elephant in the room too. So there was no kind of critique of meritocracy, that you just work hard and you'll get a job. And then lastly, bypassing the injustices of access was really central to how we were campaigning. And then the last thing, which I think is crucial right now, and it's something that's happening in Concordia and across all universities I know of in Canada, is that higher education is feeding the market for free labor. If we're giving school credit for internships that are unpaid or poorly paid, if we're involved in some kind of co-op system that saves a private company money at the expense of student labor, in these instances, as you know full well, students are paying to go to school and then working for free for the privilege of, gaining that experience. Okay, so I don't think I really need to think too much about that, but we did want to attack these principles in broad lobbying and activist terms, and also to be practical in how we would raise awareness amongst students and professors, and what they might be buying into rather unwittingly. So our first publication, here I have my show and tell, was this book here, which is called Surviving Internships. I have 3 copies, but I also, if you want to go forward again, if you want to download a copy and you have really good eyesight, but I can give you all these details later, you can get it for free. So what we meant to do here was offer exercises, practical advice, a history of this sharp turn towards exploited intern labour, what to expect, what you can deserve, what your rights are, how to know if your employers are breaking the law, which they often are, and so on. And let's go again. And we're very keen also to, this is tiny and you won't be able to see it, but this is like a mock pop psychology survey for, are you treating your interns well? So we produce things like this to sort of give to employers to say, look, we don't want to demonize you. We want you to sort of understand how these things could be improved. And then, the next thing we worked on was this book here, which has been mentioned already, which is called Training for Exploitation, Policing Employability and Reclaiming Education. And thank you. And it aims to confront what's a very dire situation in the UK right now, but I'm feeling waves of it coming this way. Let's have a look at the table of contents if you want to browse that. It's, we were like looking to be very practical, like teaching tools, a letter to university staff to inform them of these kinds of practices, because you know what academics are like. They have really like lofty kind of political principles, and then they'll do shit like sign off on an internship without kind of noticing that there's a discrepancy there. All sorts of alternative economies, so that you have a sense that there are other ways in which to earn, let's say, work experience, which aren't necessarily part of these economies. And ultimately, again, it's a free PDF. I think if you want to copy down the URL, here we go. You can help yourselves to that. How much time do I have? Am I nearly done? Okay, so what I was going to do now, if there was time, and there is to share some of the kind of... So the book's actually full of exercises, which are... although you think you're on, it's like, I'm sure all of you got like a bunch of friends who are like, well, you sound kind of cool, but I'm not really going that far. I'm not going into the wages thing, like people who are on the edge and know that internship exploitation is bad, but aren't, that actually need to work through some of the issues at stake in practical ways. So what we wanted to do was produce a set of tools for people that teach in classes, but also activist groups to involve more people. And we did that in a number of ways. So I'll talk about the more intricate ones here. So first thing is we held like a mock job fair called Creative Jobs Survival Fair. Those kind of horrible corporate fairs that happen in the EV building, that kind of thing. This will be a bit of a fast run. So we did stuff like, kind of fake advice, but it was really sort of critical. Let's go next. We had a fortune-telling booth just to sort of prove how kind of nebulous and, kind of unpredictable any future would be, instead of kind of promising people work. That was a great event because we actually met people. People came and we ended up having good chats with them, and people joined us, and people, all sorts of things, all sorts of great exchanges happened. The next very involved thing we did, which again I recommend as a really good kind of solidarity exercise, is we held a tribunal, and we've held many of them now actually. So just in case you're not aware of this kind of activity, a tribunal exists to provide a public space where the voices of the implicated are heard. The tribunal listens to the stories of precarious workers in their own words, gestures, sounds, and images. So ultimately, where am I? It basically runs like a court case where people present their evidence against injustices, and this, in this instance, in relation to workers' rights in the arts and culture, but it could be something completely different. Ultimately, let's move forward. It allows people to spend a good amount of time together beforehand, collecting evidence, and that's it. That's a research process. It means you sort of research so that you've got your case ready. and you listen to each other, you build that case. And as you can see, one group gathered to represent the voices of the unpaid and the underpaid. We had another group who were interested in institutionalized precarity, so precarity within big organizations. And that throughout this process, you have an audience listening to you, and these people end up being the jury, and they create verdicts. I hadn't ever done this before, but it turned out to be a really, powerful way of finding out about other people's situations, about the law, about rights. The coordination beforehand was really, really kind of solidarity, sort of generative. And holding it as a public event where people could join in and add their, kind of practical solutions was really sort of important. And then this is fun stuff we did too. We did these like cheesy kind of like photo romances that probably most of you are too young to have seen these in like 70s magazines. But, again, let's just run through some of these. They're just kind of... basically what it involved people getting together, like creating a narrative around precarious labor or intern abuse or whatever, and it's a bit far. Yeah, that's the last one. And actually by acting it out and by like working out how to make a simple dialogue, understanding how to transmit the key issues at hand. And again, it's a model we tried all over the place, and the place being Europe. And it was like really galvanizing for people to sort of act these things out, work out what the core narratives should be. The bus card I handed out, if you have a copy. We ended up doing kind of theatre workshops around this, people kind of acting out things. Next one. I mean, this is just very simple things. This is it's get together a whole load of internship ads, and then like just as a group vandalize the fuck out of them. Just like really write back on what is being asked of you. And again, that's a really great process with a team to kind of go, oh, you spotted that and I didn't, and kind of really getting your critical kind of faculty sharpened to see what is being asked of you from the intern market at the moment. Okay, so yeah, and then what we ended up doing with this is like moving on from that, not just criticizing, but like then writing a bill of rights or something like that with the group, a manifesto about unfair internship employment practices, for example. And then let's go. So I didn't talk about it, but obviously the goal has been really very much to collectivize and acknowledge the systemic problems in the job market and their capitalist justifications. Obviously, the onus should not be on us to prove ourselves and to compete. We've gained a lot of strength as the Precarious Workers Brigade from trying to expose what's wrong with the status quo and to challenge the injustice. But at the same time, it's been amazing for building community, and that's been a really joyful experience and something like this. I feel it with Qutes as well, and hopefully these links can kind of continue to grow. Creating alternative economies or anti-economies was also a project we've been, sort of living out for a good decade now, alongside many other similar groups. And, also organizing laterally, understanding that precarious labor is not, obviously, the arts are not the main site here. Migrant and low-income worker groups were very central and very it's people we were constantly in dialogue and struggle with. So if I had time, I could go into more of that. But, we definitely are a wide international solidarity network. And all of which to say is that although all those images came from London, Precarious Workers Brigade would love to hear from us in Montreal. And also, we're very happy if there was a branch here as well. Me in particular, I miss those guys. So, if you're interested, you can have a look here, but I think that's probably it for me for now. Thank you.